In the rush to get in here, we ripped the zipper out of my robe. Thus I come unrobed. Please do not say I was disrobed. This little pericope from the Gospel of Luke, it's not really a highly structured parable in which each piece of the story is carefully placed in. It's more of a description of a happening. Even the language, Jesus says that he noticed some boats at the water's edge, has the feeling of a narrative, not a highly constructed incident. And Jesus settles upon the notion of climbing into a boat and speaking to those from the shore, who are on the shore. One doesn't know if this was a mechanism to extract him from the pressing, stifling crowd, or whether he saw it as a mechanism for either reaching more people or more clearly. Voice over water often has that character. Perhaps both, perhaps neither. But after speaking, Jesus suggests to Simon that fishing nets should once again be put down into the water. And it's only at that point that Simon Peter realizes that this is someone who has not known the consequences of the evening's work. If I'm to read him correctly, he's thinking, this is a place devoid of fish. Based on our previous experience, it would be a waste of time and foolish to resume this effort. We're not given a reason why Jesus pressed on. Is he thinking food? We know he's a nurturer. We know that he managed to build up a meal out of just 5 fish and 4 loaves, feeding thousands. Is this yet another example of the nurturer seeking to somehow address the needs of the people? Or is this a moment of leadership differentiation? You have been unsuccessful, I will be successful. You will forever be known as those who were unable to bring in fish. I will be known forever as the one who brought in a stupendous amount. Plant forever a differentiation in their minds between the one who is fruitful and those who are fishless. I'd like to focus with you a little bit on that one part of the story, the part about the nets brimming with fish and the boat loaded to the gills. Because in some ways, the parable or the story could have evolved this way. He could have brought in some fish, and it would have differentiated from the emptiness, or half of the nets, or 3/4. But this is pressed to the extreme. This catch is as good as is possible. And it stands then as a kind of antinomy or extreme from the earlier efforts. I think this is part of the reason that Simon Peter moves quickly into a kind of mood of negative self-judgment, self-depreciation, even self-loathing. He feels his unworthiness etched against this success. He lapses into the dreaded zero-sum game, where if one is elevated, then the others must somehow be reduced or depressed. They're losers by comparison. They're how the 49ers fans are feeling in the waning weeks since the loss. And this has left us with this way of reading the story has left us with what I call an unholy hangover from the story that feeds very well into our society's sense of judgment based on metrics and quantities. Someone proudly says, we just got a new television, it's 27 inches. And, mine is 46. No, mine is 54. Tara and I have contracted to get the large from Candlestick Park, the large screen, which will soon be installed. It's actually larger than our humble abode. We work on metrics and quantities. Just a couple of years ago, when I was the president at Lancaster Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania, some folks found me from a previous congregation and asked me to do a wedding ceremony, a marriage, the language of which I had flushed out over 15 years of non-performance. But because of who they were, I went and did the service. And in the aftermath, under too loud music, I was placed next to a man, a Christian from Pennsylvania, who belonged to the Saddleback Christian community in Southern California and would commute periodically to worship. And evidently they thought we would be good conversational partners. So he began telling me the story of how he had been to Saddleback 3 months ago, and they had launched a fundraising drive for a new youth center, and the goal was $10 million. He had then said he went back 3 months later and was there, and behind the curtain were a group of youth, and one youth would come out for each million raised. And there were 50 youth, $50 million in 3 months. I'm sitting there, the president of a seminary that was started in 1825 with $15 million in its endowment. And I know that question is going to come. How big is your endowment? He's not going to ask, how do your students pursue spiritual disciplines these days? What innovation do you have in field education? I know it's going to come down to a metric that will prove embarrassing to me. In this process, we are sized or measured or declared worthy or unworthy in relationship to these standards. We are sized or measured by some form of quantity or valuation. I really think Simon Peter misread what happened. I really think that what Jesus was suggesting is that the outcome, as significant as it was drawn from the work of all. Jesus, after all, didn't cast and pull in the nets himself. He was just the one that made a suggestion that energized all those who were going to be part of this outcome. It is what we have done together that's significant. What we have done together. The haul of fish, where previously there was nothing, is a foretaste of what community accomplishes together. It becomes a fecund enterprise. What was empty becomes full. What was arid becomes moist. What was a time of depreciation becomes a time in which there is abundance and a sharing among all. There's a lot today in leadership studies out of the Kennedy Management Center and other places, that says that leadership should be charismatic but not hierarchical. Charismatic means the ability to infuse energy and spirit into an organization, into a community, but not a leader that wants to control every part of the process and dominate the experience of community. And I think that is a rich lesson if we read this text in the light of that. Jesus is one who energizes, sets direction, but the community as equal participants in the outcome. When Tara and I were in the parish some time back, we started a youth theater. Actually, Tara was mainly the architect of it. And we had any number of children, not a moribund group, but a fairly healthy group. We wrote plays, we accepted plays, and we reached, though, a plateau of sameness year to year. And one Sunday, in the audience or the congregation were two individuals, a husband and wife, who had been clowns for Ringling Brothers Circus for the last 10 years. We talked to them. It was a sort of evangelism in muted way. And they did, in one play, a unique thing. They took something like a hula hoop, dredged it in a liquid that I could not name the contents of, and then ran with it from the back of the sanctuary all the way down the aisle, creating more than a 40-foot soap bubble, 5 feet across. It hung there in the air until it finally popped. We didn't have to shampoo the carpet for years. Immediately, the youth program, as they became part of it, jumped. We had to start saying, you'll have to wait to join. Youth came out of the woodwork and out of the neighborhood. They all wanted to be with the clowns, not with the pastor and his wife, but with the clowns. And I came to realize that what energizes a group and creates that sense of forward movement is often not the leader, but someone else. Someone else whose unique gift is able to ignite new life in the community. I've since, in my career, looked for people with hula hoops or the equivalent. Looked here, looked there. Look for those people who are able, through their unique gift, to add just that dimension that ignites life and servant and mission. It's high calling for each of us. That's how church life moves forward. When Pat last week at the annual meeting recited the names, the endless list of names of people on staff or in the congregation who've carried special responsibility, it was not just a sense of politeness or duty. It is a recognition of the nature of community, that it is built up and carried by the gifts of each of us. I think Jesus meant that. He didn't mean for Simon Peter to be cast into self-loathing. He was part of the gracious celebration of what people in the Spirit can do together. Amen.